Hi everyone, I hope you're really well. I've got something a little bit different today. Well, a lot different actually. Last weekend I went to my very first sci-fi comic con. I have always wanted to go to a Comic Con, and of course I took my camera along for the ride so you could see what it was that I saw, experience what I experienced, and just listen to my general thoughts on what I thought of my very first Comic Con. So that is the video that we have today. If you didn't know already, and regulars to the channel probably do know this, I absolutely love sci-fi. It's by far my favourite genre. I just love the ability of being transported to somewhere else, and I'm a dreamer. I have quite the imagination, so I just love sci-fi. It really appeals to me. And there was a particular attraction to this Comic Con that I chose to go to, and it's all thanks to my friend Dave for taking me. So Dave, if you're watching, hi, thank you so much for taking me. I had the best day ever. And the main attraction was the fact that one of the most... See, I'm beginning to lose the power of speech already. I can't actually believe I met this man last Sunday. It's absolutely nuts. But the biggest attraction for me in terms of this Comic Con was the fact that I was getting to meet Chris Barrie. Now, I don't know if you know who Chris Barrie is, but as far as I'm concerned, he's an absolute legend. And I did meet him. I wish that I had actually filmed the meeting with him, but I was pretty cool, but I was actually really overwhelmed, and there was a lot of emotion going on at the time. So yeah, I probably wasn't the best vlogger in that respect, but I have a lot of other footage from speaking to other people and having a good old look around. But yeah, Chris Barrie was the main attraction, and if you don't know, he's probably most famous for the British sci-fi series Red Dwarf, of which I am a huge fan. I have been a huge fan of Red Dwarf for as long as I can remember. I remember it as a kid. It came out, I think, in the 80s somewhere. It was like the mid to late 80s, so right when I was quite young really, and I just grew up with it. And Chris Barrie, he is such an amazing performer. He plays the character Arnold Rimmer in Red Dwarf, and he is known for being quite pompous, self-obsessed. It's a bit of a worry, the fact that I like the character so much, because I don't really know what that says about me, but there's just something about him that I really like. And I don't know how old I was when this happened, but at some point, probably somewhere in the 90s, I definitely had my feelings grow for the character of Rimmer, and they have stayed strong ever since, and obviously quite a long time has gone since then. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what that says about me in terms of my taste in men, because he is quite a character, but there's just something about him that I really love, and he's funny, and yeah, he's just amazing. So if you're not familiar with Red Dwarf as a TV show, I would highly recommend you check it out if you are into sci-fi, because it's incredibly silly, and the props back in the day were very clunky and flimsy, and it was kind of hilarious. They're still making it now. There have been quite a few kind of comeback series. Some have been more successful than others, but there's just something about Chris Barrie's ability to get right back into character, and that's something I wish that I'd asked him about when I went to this con actually. Chris has also done other things as well. He was also in The British Empire, another British TV show which I think was more in the 90s, and that was another obnoxious character that he played, Gordon Brittis, who was the manager of a leisure centre, and they are actually in talks to bring that series back. And that news is from the man himself when I was talking to him, so that was really exciting. In terms of other stuff he has been in, way back when in, I'm guessing, the 80s somewhere. He did a lot of voice work for Spitting Image because he does do a lot of impressions and voices. And other than that, he is known for his TV series on cars. He's quite the petrol head. And he also starred in the Angelina Jolie interpretations of Tomb Raider that came out, I think, in the early noughties, wasn't it? He played Hilary the butler, which I did actually say to him when I met him, I was really surprised at the casting there because I'm also a massive, massive Tomb Raider fan as well. And if you're familiar with the game concept or anything to do with Tomb Raider, then the butler was always really old. And obviously Chris Barrie is not. And when he filmed the Tomb Raider films, he was obviously quite a bit younger still than he is now. So he definitely looked very youthful, but he was also fantastic in those films as well. But this video isn't all about Chris Barrie, even though I could definitely make it all about Chris Barrie. I'm not sure how many people would want to see that. This is all about my first experience of going to a con, and it was absolutely amazing. You can probably tell from the fact that I am just kind of glowing with happiness about this experience. I'm definitely eyeing up going to another one. The one that I actually went to was Stratford Upon Avon, and it was their first con as well, so it kind of felt quite special in that respect. It was their first one, it was my first one. Chris Barrie was there, which, you know, he was the one that made me definitely want to go to that one, to be honest, because he hasn't got many lined up this year by the looks of it. So it was quite a long journey. I got up at 5:30 on Sunday and got home, I think it was about 6:30 in the evening that day. So again, thank you so much to you, Dave, for putting up with me in the car all that time, up and back. It was very much appreciated. In terms of a first experience of a con, I don't think I could have asked for a better experience. Maybe it was because of the fact that I had Dave with me, and he is a seasoned pro when it comes to attending these kind of events, not just from a civvy point of view in terms of just turning up in whatever clothes he wants, but he does actually cosplay as well, which is very exciting. So he already knew lots of the people, he knew how a lot of it worked, which I found really helpful actually, because I think if he wasn't there and I'd kind of just gone in on my own or with someone else who didn't really know the score, I would have been a little bit like, I don't really know what the protocol is, and that sounds like such a British thing to say, but it's true, because when you went in the door, the venue itself was actually held in a leisure centre, so there was a massive, I think it was like a court or something, basketball court, and it was full of stalls and things that you could buy, all sorts of different things in terms of like the sci-fi fantasy world. There was a whole bank of Daleks, which was very exciting because I used to be quite the Doctor Who fan, not so much anymore. Definitely the David Tennant era was the era that I was interested in. They also had a retro gaming section, which was so exciting to see. I didn't actually play any of the games myself, and I wish that I had, because they had such nostalgic games there. They had Manic Miner. I actually managed to recognise that from just seeing the graphic on screen. I think they were playing it on a Spectrum, and I was very excited to see that because I did have a Spectrum back in the day. Before that we had a Commodore 64. After that I had a Sega Mega Drive. I am quite the gamer as well, if you didn't realise. I do love gaming, and it was so nice to see the bank of retro games consoles. They had all sorts there, including one which I didn't even realise you could get on console. It was one that I'd only ever seen in an arcade, where you were basically shooting zombies, and I remember going to arcades when I was younger and stood with a friend of mine, and both of us playing different characters and shooting all these zombies, and it was quite a surreal moment seeing quite young kids playing these games that I remember when I was younger. There was something like surreal but really quite special about that. Something else that I also loved seeing is the cosplayers as well. So everyone walking around in all sorts of different costumes, and half the fun I think is trying to figure out who it is that they are trying to actually replicate. And there were a few people where I was a little bit like, I have no idea, but there were lots that I did realise who they were, and the effort that people go into is absolutely amazing. So that was really lovely to see. I am definitely up for doing some cosplay at something in the future, and I've already had some ideas that centre largely around Red Dwarf, to be fair, because I think if I was to get into cosplay myself, for me it would have to be something that came from the heart, really, something that really, really mattered to me. And I'm a massive fan of Red Dwarf. It's always been there for as long as I can remember, really. It's the only TV show that goes back that far in terms of how long I've loved it. And there are a couple of female hologram characters that I would be interested in trying to come up with some kind of costume for, because yeah, it's a bit of a mind boggle trying to get your head around how to create the costumes. But if you're not familiar with Chris Barrie's character Rimmer in Red Dwarf, he is alive at the beginning, but then very quickly he becomes a hologram. And I don't think that's too much of a spoiler, because all of that happens in the very first episode. Something I haven't even talked about yet, which is arguably one of the most exciting things about this particular event, and most cons for that matter, is obviously the actors that are there, or the celebrities, or whatever you want to say, the famous people basically. And what was really funny about this con in particular is when we got there, I made a beeline for Chris Barrie. Of course, you know, he was the main man who I was there to see, and he was on the end of what was a whole row of kind of people sat down, and I was kind of aware of them, but I didn't really give them much of my attention, to be honest. So I went and chatted to him. He was lovely and charming, just as you would expect him to be. And then we were there for quite a few hours, and the longer I was there, the more sort of settled I became. And I got chatting to a few of the people that were sat down at this long kind of table at which Chris Barrie was on the end of. And they were amazingly approachable, really chatty, just chatting about all sorts of random stuff. And it was actually after chatting to someone for about 20 minutes, the penny finally dropped that actually this person was famous and had been in films, and I'd been just chatting to them like they were just anybody. And because I'd already been chatting to them, I was absolutely fine. I didn't suddenly kind of go, oh my goodness, or anything. But it was literally this moment of looking at him and thinking, oh my goodness, you were actually in Thor, I think. And in front of each of these people, they have pictures from all of the different things they've been in, which of course they can go on and sign. You can also take your own stuff as well for them to sign. And it was when I started looking at these pictures that I realised actually what these people had done and what films they'd been in, and it just blew my mind. Someone else I chatted to was the lovely, lovely Paul Warren. That is amazing. You do actually look quite a lot like him. Yeah.
I took his haircut for 3 months. That's enough of that. That's why it's kept in the folder.
Oh no, you look adorable.
It comes out every time someone into a bottle that white talk about.
Yeah, I like how it works.
I wasn't really aware of who he was until I was chatting to him, because I think I'd be forgiven for saying that I don't think you've ever actually seen his face in any of the films he's been in, because he is a body artist basically. I don't know if that's the right term, but that's what I would sort of call him anyway. He's been in some massive films such as Harry Potter, Star Wars, Captain America, and it was really interesting talking to him about the process in which a body artist goes through, because so often they don't get the credit for the work that they have done. And straight away I'm thinking of someone like Doug Jones, who was in Hellboy or Pan's Labyrinth, where they create these amazing, amazing characters that may or may not actually have a speaking part with them as well. I know that back in the first Hellboy film, there was a different vocal actor that matched his performance for the body part of Abe Sapien, the character he played. And in the first Hellboy film, you had David Hyde Pierce playing the vocal side of it, and then Doug Jones actually providing the physical performance. And there was, I believe, a really lovely moment where I think David Hyde Pierce was like, it's all Doug Jones, it's all Doug Jones that has brought this character to life. So I think quite often the body performers don't really get the recognition that they deserve, because there's a huge amount of process that goes into creating the character, particularly if they are quite kind of physically quirky or something. He was actually the body double for Daniel Radcliffe when he was in the Harry Potter films, so I thought that was really, really exciting, and he was amazingly down to earth to talk to, like they all were. It was an absolute pleasure. The last person that I chatted to on the day was an actor from Game of Thrones, and as you probably know, I absolutely love Game of Thrones. It's definitely my kind of TV, and the chap that I spoke to was Ross O'Hennessy, and Ross played the Lord of Bones in terms of the wildlings, so you never actually saw his face as far as I can remember, so if you looked at him you wouldn't necessarily have known that he was in Game of Thrones, but he was very, very well built, and I'm not sure if the footage I've got of him really translates how well stacked he was, put it that way. But he was an absolute delight to talk to. Not only was he amazingly approachable and friendly, but it turns out he's also a massive geek when it comes to Game of Thrones. So it was a pleasure hearing his theories about how he would like Game of Thrones to finish, and his comparison from having read the book to actually being in it. It was just fantastic to talk to someone who had that kind of experience but also passion for the actual series itself.
I think the reason why they're making us wait a year and a half is, do you remember the Battle of the Bastards, where Jon Snow stood against Ramsay Bolton's army? The whole sequence in that took 1 month to make, just the whole sequence alone. So I think the delay is that we are going to get a massive quality of production. That's what I think is going to go on. I haven't heard that they've shot many different endings, so I can't comment on that.
And one of the main reasons why we got chatting is it was quite quiet, I suppose. Like I said, it wasn't a big con or anything. It was definitely one of the smaller ones. And I just happened to be sort of checking out his photos, basically, in terms of what he'd been in, because I knew what things he'd been in, but I was just trying to kind of place him. But like I said, because his face was covered, you wouldn't necessarily have known it was him anyway. So I was having a good look through his pictures, and the t-shirt that I decided to wear on that day was my Game of Thrones t-shirt, which has got the quoted line from Tyrion Lannister written on it, saying, "I drink and I know things," because that's probably one of his most famous lines, and it's one of my favourites as well. I did actually have quite a few comments throughout the day from people sort of pointing it out and saying what a great t-shirt it was. So Ross actually pointed at my t-shirt and he said to me, "That is how I want Game of Thrones to end. I want to see Tyrion Lannister on the throne." So there you go. That is from someone who's actually in Game of Thrones themselves. I'm not sure if that will happen. I really don't want them to kill Tyrion off, because Tyrion is a fantastic character, but we will have to see. We did ask him a little bit about whether he had heard anything around them filming a few different endings just to make sure that nothing got leaked, but he hadn't heard anything about that himself. So yeah, who knows? It's all so exciting. In terms of the stuff that they actually had available there to look at, it was a real mixture of like retro toys, handmade things, lots of things that obviously related to different movies and TV series. So if you are remotely interested in this kind of world, then definitely check it out, because there are some really interesting traders there, and this was particularly at quite a small con. I did definitely like to go to a much bigger one just to see how it compares, because I've heard that some of the big ones, it can get a little bit crazy, quite busy. Sometimes the stars aren't quite so accessible as they are at the smaller cons. So because I have been to a smaller one, I definitely like to go to a big one just to compare it, just to see what the difference is, because although at some of the bigger ones I can imagine that it's probably quite overwhelming, maybe a bit intimidating, they'll have a lot of massive name stars there. At the same time, you're also going to have maybe some bigger attractions and other stuff going on as well. So I'm definitely up for going to another one, put it that way. But in terms of the stuff that I came away with from this con, obviously the main thing that I came away with was this beautiful signed picture of the man himself. So this is Chris Barrie, and how old is this? I would say this is probably a 90s rimmer if I'm going to be a little bit geeky right now. Although he doesn't have the H on his forehead, which is quite confusing. I'm just looking at how old he looks, and he doesn't look as young to be a kind of late 80s, early 90s rimmer. Who knows, maybe I should have asked him. He had a few different pictures that you could choose for him to sign, but it's always been about this man. And I wish I'd come up with something a little bit more creative in terms of how he signed it, because he's literally just said, "To Kate, best wishes, Chris Barrie," and he does have an awesome signature as well. So I am very happy to have this signature in my life. I could have gone absolutely crazy when it came to some of the other stuff that was there, because like I said, you've got a lot of the merchandise that you would expect to see and could probably find on the internet quite easily, but then you also had some more individual traders that were maybe creating things themselves, or they were selling things that were a little bit more unusual. And there was something that I saw that totally caught my eye, and I just fell in love. And this will probably show you how much of a gamer fan I am, because look at these cuties. So here we have the cross-stitched characters from the Atari game, I think it was, Bubble Bobble. And to be fair, I wasn't even that young when I played this. I was probably about 18 or something, and me and a really good friend, Lucy, it was her Atari that we used to play it on, and I think we completed the entire game once. Because one thing that was really funny about watching the younger kids play these old games was the fact that there were no save points back in the day. You had to go through the stress and pray that you could actually get through without wasting all your 3 lives or whatever it was. Kids don't know the struggles that we faced just to complete a game. So yeah, I think we completed that game once. It was 100 levels, if I remember rightly, and it just got harder and harder the further in that you got. But there were these 2 little adorable kind of dragon-like characters who used to blow bubbles, and then you could use them to kill your enemies, you could bounce on them. It was absolutely amazing. It's one of my favourite old retro games. And just look how cute they are. I just spotted them right away. Absolutely adorable. The only other thing that I brought home, if I remember rightly, is my little boy sent me on a quest to come back with a stormtrooper. So he did get a stormtrooper, which he very much likes.
Uh-oh!
Would you like a jelly baby?
I would love a jelly baby. Have an orange one.
You may. Just don't take the green ones.
Aww.
Why not the green ones?
They're mine.
Well, why have you got them on the tray then?
That's Osgood. She's colourblind.
What would happen if I ate a green one? Would I be in trouble?
You would be a darling by 6 p.m.
Oh!
Thank you very much for jelly beans.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
You're too nice for a darling.
1 hour. Do not be far from facilities. Watching you.
What, in case I steal a green one?
Just watching you.
I'm taking a green one because you told me not to. Never mind.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
You will join the cult of Skaro by 6 p.m.
That's told me.
So I really hope that you found this video helpful, interesting, entertaining, whatever the case may be, in terms of if you've been to a con yourself or whether you're considering going to one. I would highly recommend it. It was the best day out. I honestly didn't think I could be in the same room for as long as that and be as entertained as I was, but I was. It was so much fun. The people were all so lovely, not just, you know, the famous people, but just everyone. There was this lovely, lovely atmosphere, and I definitely want to be part of it again, maybe in some kind of cosplay situation, who knows. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know if you would like to see more content like this from me in the future, because like I said, I am considering going to another con. I don't think this is going to end with this one con. I have got the bug and I need more. So let me know if you'd like to see another video like this from me in the future, and hopefully the next one I produce will be even better than this, because I'll be a little bit more familiar with how everything works. But like I said, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and that is it from me today. So I hope you're all really well, and me and Chris, although to be fair, it's Rimmer that I love really, we're gonna go and have some private time or something. Anyway, I'll see you again soon. Bye!